Welcome to the structural stability component of the exercise section of this portal. Now this component is very fundamentally important to not only you getting the most out of your exercise, but your total body well-being. And it's unfortunately true that a large percentage of the exercising population and even exercise specialists themselves, personal trainers, as it were, don't recognize the importance of this component and thereby don't know how to address it effectively. And this really comes out of a motivation that we naturally gravitate toward when we exercise, is that we want our body to look very good. So often the focus of our training goes straight toward the exercises that will directly impact the external muscle groups, the global movers as it were, and that we will change the appearance in the mirror and on the beach. But there are also a second set, we could say, of muscles that are on the inside of the body that are not as visible to the surface of the body and yet provide a very important role, and that is to secure the structure of the bones and hold your joints together and your bones in the correct alignment, which is generally referred to as good posture, most effectively. So as you can imagine, this is a pretty important thing, and unless you've injured yourself or are struggling to get results, you might not realize or be motivated to address this. So what I'm going to do is convey this through an analogy, and hopefully it's going to hit home and you're going to assimilate that knowledge and really feel motivated to include this within your training routine regularly, because it's going to make a major impact on you actually getting the results that you want to get. The analogy is this: it's between a car and the human body. When it comes to a car, what we have is the body of the car that houses everything else. And then underneath the body is two axles, which allows the forces generated from the motor to move through the axles to the wheels that then spin and generate locomotion or movement and get you from A to B. So likewise, when it comes to the human body, you also have a central body, the torso as it were, and the spinal column ultimately coming out of the brain that then has the pelvic and shoulder girdles attaching to it. So the pelvic and shoulder girdles are like the axles of the car, right? And then you have your arms and legs that attach to your pelvic and shoulder girdles through the shoulder joint and the hip joints. So as you can imagine, it's pretty important that you have these structures held together very effectively. And when it comes to the car, you'll have various welding structures, nuts and bolts that'll hold the axles onto the car and the wheels onto the axles, and that this is really important. Otherwise, you can imagine as you generate speed, then you don't want the structure vibrating and moving out of position and being inefficient, because one, you'll get wear and tear and things will break down more likely, but you also could generate some incorrect movement that will result in a crash. So it's unfortunately true also that a lot of us crash our body because we are straight out there unleashing with the exercises that we think are going to get our results the most effectively, but we haven't addressed these fundamental components. And if you're a corporate person, it's most likely that you are seated down for a large percentage of the day, and what tends to happen, and you'll know what I'm talking about, is that you begin to slouch. Your chest drops down toward your pelvis and you generate what's called a kyphotic position. It's a postural issue where your shoulders actually begin to droop down toward your pelvis. They come forward as well. That's called forward shoulders. And as a result of that, your abdominal wall begins to shut down. The muscles down the back of your spine, your spinal extensors, begin to atrophy, that is to dissolve into weakness. And you gravitate into that poor postural position. The issue with this is that, of course, it looks terrible, but actually, functionally, in terms of your biomechanics, it brings your bones out of correct alignment with gravity. And as a result of that, you become inefficient, and every movement that you undertake will become laborious, we could say. It will become much harder than it needs to be because you haven't got yourself into correct alignment. So fundamentally, what we need to achieve first, and this is what I would guide people to do first of all when they come to exercise, although of course you want to go and start building chests and abs, I imagine, maybe glutes or something like that, which we can do at the same time, but I'll cover that in another section. But what I really encourage you to do is to address that fundamental issue, and that's your spinal position. So I've created an exercise training program specifically for that, postural enhancements and spinal mobilization, in the release section. Go and check that out, begin to apply it, and just notice how much better and more open you feel after that. So what that's going to do is it's going to allow your shoulders to come back, it's going to allow your chest to come up, which is going to change the alignment of your pelvic and shoulder girdles, in other words the axles, so that the forces moving through the body are more efficient. that's a much better place to start with your exercise. Otherwise, if you haven't done that, if you want to go straight to building chest and abs, glutes and thighs, then what you'll do is that you'll generate more tension in your musculoskeletal structure, and this will actually reinforce the incorrect position. So number one, we want to come to realign the spinal position. Number two, we want to secure the structure called the pelvic and shoulder girdles, in other words the axles, onto the spine, and we want to secure the arms and legs onto the pelvic and shoulder girdles so that you don't have vibrating joints and your wheels aren't going to fall off when you begin to move a lot more rapidly. So I hope that makes sense to you, and I hope you've taken that on board, because all of the exercises in this section are geared towards generating strength in those muscle groups while allowing you to come into a better postural position so that you can begin to perform much more efficiently. And it's the case that a lot of us want to straight away exercise to reduce our body fat, gain strength, or increase our muscle size, and don't realize how significantly correlated this component actually is with those goals. You see, to actually reduce your body fat or gain strength or gain size, you really need to train yourself with intensity. If you can't do that, you're not going to get much of a result. So you need to be able to put a lot of force through your body. That's what intensity is. And your body has subconscious protective mechanisms to prevent you from generating too much force, fortunately. Otherwise, you'd injure yourself more often. And so, in other words, your nervous system is not going to allow you to put up too much voltage if it's going to result in you injuring yourself more often. As a consequence of that, qualitatively, that's just called you're going to be weaker. Your nervous system won't be generating as much power. You won't be able to lift as much, and as a result, you won't stimulate your muscle mass to generate a higher metabolic rate, increase your protein content, which is called strength gains, chronic strength gains, and as a result, you'll get your result much faster, right, in terms of increasing strength size and reducing your body fat. So this is very much correlated with that. It's just that when you don't have the knowledge and particularly the experience of how much more effectively your body will operate when you include this, you won't necessarily feel as motivated to include this. So fortunately, then I've got a linked exercise section in this portal, and you'll be able to combine not only your external motivations to look good in front of the mirror and on the beach, but also be practical and intelligent about functionally strengthening your body in a way that's going to be beneficial for you moving forward. So I'll go into a little bit more detail in a forthcoming video about which specific muscles and components we're actually addressing in this section, why we're addressing it, and which exercises are involved, so that you can be informed as to not only what to do, but why you're doing it, because that'll give you knowledge, that'll give you motivation, and it's more likely that you'll begin to apply it.